listening to I Am Refocused Radio with your host, Shamaya Reed. This show is designed to inspire you to live your purpose and regain your focus. And now, here's your host, Shamaya Reed.
Hey, welcome to I Am Refocused Radio. We are here once again, and man, today we have another amazing show lineup for y'all today. Today we have someone who's going to talk to us, individual coaching and, helping us get to that better place and helping us really be focused. Today, we have a one and only coaching leader of future work, Brian Gorman. He has an amazing website that you can check out. It's transforminglives.coach. Today's topic is going to be interesting. We're going to talk about Ask, Shut Up, Listen. But without further ado, I just want to welcome my guest to the show. Brian Gorman, how are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing great, Shamaya. Thank you for having me.
Man, I want to say thank you for taking time talking to us. Before we dive into today's topic, kind of tell the audience a little bit about yourself and all the experience that you have gained throughout the years.
Well, we don't want to bore them and keep them here for hours, so I'm going to make this brief because I've been doing this work around change and being a change catalyst, being a change guide, understanding the change experience since 1967. Much, which is when I was a freshman in college, much of my career has been in the field of organizational change management, which is a misnomer because organizations don't change, people do. And so today I'm a coach and really understanding what the psychology of change is, what the change journey is, what the neuroscience around people going through change or not.
And with your experience and with your accomplishments, people, like you said, you can probably keep us for hours talking about your accomplishments, but you have it well documented on your website. People can go to transforminglives.coach and they can click on About Brian and go to your accomplishments and credentials. You have a very strong, impressive resume. So with all the success that you've been able to gain, what's some of the things that you learned along the way as far as being an effective leader?
Well, I'll jump right to the topic that you brought up at the start. Shut up and listen. Today's workforce is very different than the workforce of the last century. People are not, we don't raise our children to just shut up and do as we tell them to. We don't raise our children to be automatons. And yet so often in the workplace today, leaders still take that impression that I'm the boss. I'm going to tell you what to do. I'm going to micromanage you. And what we're doing is shutting off any desire to innovate. We're shutting off any desire to be fully present. When we talk about employee engagement, being that leader who is the traditional baby boomer leader, and I'm a baby boomer. I was never very traditional, but I am a baby boomer. Being that traditional leader is what's causing your employees to leave.
When you look at today's world and how everyone, quote unquote, we're so busy, so many things to do, so many places to go, and we don't always have that time, or should I say, we always don't make that time for self-care or reflecting. How important is it for us to slow down and not always allow ourselves to be overwhelmed with, I'm just busy, quote unquote?
It's critical, Shamaya. If you want to be bringing your best to work, you need to take care of yourself. And it doesn't make a difference whether you're a frontline worker or the CEO of a global company. If we're not taking that time for self-care, if we're not taking that time for reflection, we're not literally, and it, there's neuroscience, there's physiology, there's all those things behind it. We're not able to bring our best person our best selves to what we're doing for a living.
And like you said earlier in the show, you talked about how it's the people that change. You know, it's not necessarily the organization that changes by itself or whatever. It's the people within the organization. And when we touch on self-care, when it comes to having that trust inside the office, how important is it for us to make sure that we are making that a possibility and practicing that versus kind of like free for all? You just here to work type of mindset.
If you don't trust me, I don't trust you. And if I don't trust you, I'm not going to be open with you. I'm not going to be vulnerable with you. I'm not going to take risks with you. I'm not going to be able to give my best. And so I spend a lot of time with leaders, coaching around trust. And the model I use is a neuroscience-based model that was created by a brilliant woman who passed away a few years ago named Judith E. Glasser. And it's the only acronym that I bring into my work because I find acronyms are a good way to have secret clubs, and I'm not into secret clubs. But this acronym is TRUST. And the first T is transparency. And we all tend to know what that means. We may or may not embody it. But the piece of transparency that most people forget or don't engage in is, and this is what I need from you. So yes, being transparent about ourselves, about what's going on in the organization, because if we're not, if everything is happening sort of under the covers and we're not sharing that with the people that work for us, they know that there's stuff happening under the covers. They fill in the blanks. So it's being transparent about what's going on, but it's also being transparent about this is what I need from you. R is relationship. And that's the relationship that occurs when you walk in the other's shoes, when you really learn to see the world through their eyes. So, Sue is a single mother who has children with, or a child with learning disabilities. Understanding what that means for her, it is not necessarily that she's any less committed to the job, but she may need more flexibility than Tom, who has a stay-at-home wife who's taking care of the kids. So R is relationship. U is understanding. That's the understanding that comes from really deep listening, appreciative inquiry. S is shared success. Shared success takes really talking about what do you, Shemaiah, want to accomplish? What do I want to accomplish? How can we both achieve those things in the work that we're doing together? And then T is telling the tough truths with caring and candor. And all too often, leaders have all the caring in the world until they're totally fed up, and then they're ready to let you go. Or they have all the candor in the world, and they leave you feeling like you're a worthless employee. Trust is fundamental.
Once again, listen to Refocus Radio, talking to our guest today, Brian Gorman. Go to his website. It's transforminglives.coach. And change is not always easy. Sometimes we be on this quote unquote life's journey and we're just trying to go with the flow, and we do every now and then get it right because we're listening to people like you or someone with some kind of influence to help direct us in the right direction. But while the journey is not easy, how do we plan the actual change? Because it's one thing to say, okay, yeah, I do need to change this, but how do we actually prepare ourselves to take those next steps?
So the important thing to know about change is that there really is only one change journey. Back in the mid 20th century, Joseph Campbell did a lot of research. He was a mythologist and a psychologist. And what he discovered is that there is only one journey through all myths across time, across cultures. And he called it the hero's journey. And that is the journey through change. And so just very quickly at a high level, it begins with the end in mind. We all talk about that. But for me, the neuroscience of beginning with the end in mind is not saying, this is the change I want to make, and when it happens, I will have achieved these things, or I will be in this way different. That's a head trip. And it's so easy to run into the obstacles and say, well, maybe I'll modify my goal. Beginning with the end in mind, and there's neuroscience behind this, is beginning with a story about having achieved that change. So it's a head, heart, gut story. It's, I can't believe I did this. I had to overcome these obstacles, and here I am. And this is what it feels like. You're actually beginning to build new neural networks before you take the first step. Then for me, the next piece of that journey is starting to prepare, not plan, because we only plan for what's in our consciousness, and there's so much below the surface that's going to hold us back. It might be relationships, it might be money, it might be self-doubt. There are so many things that can hold us back from that journey. So we need to begin to surface those so that we can plan for what pieces of those things we need to change in order to complete this journey. And then the planning, really, if anybody has made a plan that's more than about 2 steps long and completed it according to plan, bless you, because life doesn't go according to plan. So planning really is a rotating, ongoing process. What's important is knowing the milestones along the way. Am I making progress to do these things? Am I making progress in being different in ways that will help me achieve this goal? Then it's taking the journey. It's staying focused. It's living with that story every day, deepening those neural networks so that when you run into the obstacles that are inevitable, your subconscious says, I know what it's like on the other side. I will find a way through, over, under, around this obstacle because I know what it's like to actually achieve that dream.
And speaking of achieving that dream, we kind of going on with this is ideal. It's a process. And like you said, it's not a couple steps and then, oh, okay, life is easy. I'm living everything that I ever wanted to live, as far as experience and success. But what I'm getting at is we have to learn how to create, or should I ask you, is there a way we can formulate how we create things as far as, okay, we think about it, we plan it out, and then we execute? Is there a certain process that can help guide us do that better?
Again, it's that basic process of starting with the story from the future, preparing, planning. On my website, actually, there is a PDF of the hero and the Sherpa, the hero's journey, that people can use as a guide. It's a very light version of what the experience is really about, but it is about reprogramming our brains, basically.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. And someone listens right now and they are a respected leader and they want to respect that trust of being a leader. Because I think that when people are trusted to be a leader, it's a lot more responsibility that they must attend to and recognize. Will you say to people out there who have that platform where they are entrusted leadership and dependent on to either deliver or secondly, continue that journey of leading others to do great things?
It's important as a leader that you have vision. It's important as a leader, even if you literally are the smartest person on your team, even if you're literally the smartest person in the room, the collective is smarter. And so that's where shut up and listen comes from. The collective is smarter. Listen to your people. And if you've listened to me, I've not once talked about employees, because employees are roles. You have real people working for you. Listen to your people, get to know them. That's the R in trust. Get them, know them as people. And do everything you can to set them up for success. Do everything you can to keep the road in front of them clear and get out of the way. Because if they're doing what they're passionate about doing, you can't slow them down.
Yeah, I like that. I like that. And when you see how, when you look back at your own life and see the accomplishments that you've been able to make, what's one thing that sticks out as far as like maybe a pattern, a common thread that always helped you to go from point A to point B and keep yourself from giving up and being plateaued to where you just want to say, you know what, I'm not going to try no more. How did you keep yourself focused and always going forward?
So a couple of things to say there. First of all, we all need those plateaus. Those plateaus are a chance to re-energize. You talked about self-care before, to re-energize, to refocus, to determine, am I still heading up the same peak? Is the path still the one that I thought it was? Or is it time to change my direction? Is it time to change my dream? The problem is so many people hit a plateau and they sort of plant roots there. For me, there are two, and it sounds almost like it doesn't fit, but it does. There are two things that really have served me best. One is having that story from the future. And quite literally, Shemaiah, I have mine sitting in a folder on my desk, and I visit it every day. It's having that story from the future. So I'm always working toward the future. And the best way I can do that is always being present in the moment. So everything I can do to be present right now with you is the best way I can be working toward that future.
Man, so many things can keep a person from believing that they can, right? Do what they need to do to get things done that they need to get done in order for them to reach that certain goal, or that certain dream, or whatever it is that inspires you to push yourself, whether it's a certain career or if it's, starting a business, whatever it is. We all have something that we live for. And with the show, it's all about, a person recognizing that they have a purpose, something that's bigger than themselves, and that there's a bigger picture. We're not the picture, like we're just kind of part of the picture. How, for you yourself, have you used your purpose to be your reminder, if you will, that there is always going to be a bigger call, if you will? So that will be your anchor, so that you're not just roaming around, going through the routine.
I've never been good at routine. And that I learned that a lot before I learned what my purpose in life is, what makes my heart sing. And I guess the short answer to your question is really knowing what makes your heart sing. and examining, is what I'm doing feeding not just my family, not just my ego, but feeding my soul as well? And
Yes.
you're right. We all have those, what I call gremlins, that can hold us back. But there's stories, whether the story was little girls aren't engineers, they're nurses, or stories like, how did you get a C in math? You're dumb. We buy those stories, we play those tapes, and they hold us back. Again, neuroscience tells us you can change that story. And if you change that story, you'll change your life.
Man, I like that, man. And going back to what we said, the topic of the show, or the title of the show is going to be Ash Up and Listen. It's not just going to be clickbait, but I think it's really like it's good to think of life that way. I'm gonna say it this way: if you ask yourself, okay, what do I like? What makes me passionate as far as what makes me happy? And if you pursue that and you stop, kind of like what you just said, listening to the negative old things that probably try to place you inside a box, or limit the way you think or look at life. What do you think about that? Because I feel like the more we pursue what makes us feel inspired and happy, that's what you refine your call in life.
Absolutely. It's interesting. I'm actually just reading a book titled Alive at Work. And the author talks about the neuroscience of our seeking system. And what he's talking about is that as human beings, we are seeking fulfillment. We are seeking the opportunity to create. We're seeking the opportunity to discover and to move beyond what we are and who we are and where we are. And business is not designed to feed the seeking system. Schools are not designed to feed the seeking system. And so many of us learn to shut that system down. And it saddens me. It doesn't surprise me. It saddens me when I'm working with a leader and I say, what feeds your soul, or what makes your heart sing, or what are you passionate about? And they say, I don't know. It's not that we don't have that ability. It's that have been so many forces in our lives that have said, that's not what's important. My father was never that blatant about it, but he would always say to me, when are you going to get a real job? And what he meant, he was a pharmacist. His father was a pharmacist. My brother graduated from college as a chemical engineer. He had one employer his entire life. My sister had two employers her entire career. I have not only changed employers multiple times, I've changed careers because that's what was feeding me at the time.
Yeah. I think a lot can be taken away from this episode. Once again, listen to Refocus Radio, talking to our guest, Brian Gorman. Man, before we wrap up, you also have a podcast yourself. You don't just do coaching for people, but you also have a podcast. Real quick, tell our listeners a little bit about what your show focuses on and what the core mission is.
At the thread of all of my work is people moving through change. And, when I was talking about the change journey before, I was talking in terms of individuals. But again, when we look at organizations are people. And so to scale, I have seen that same model work for global organizational transformations. I'm a multipreneur. So I host or co-host or share hosting duties on 3 different podcasts. Change Management Review is a podcast for change practitioners and change leaders. It's Doobie Time, which is DO-BE time, is a podcast specifically for entrepreneurs and business leaders that focuses on the doing and the being of successful business leadership. And then I share hosting duties with Change Management Review. I co-host on It's Doobie Time. And then I am the host on Conversations, which is spelled like the word conversations is, except with a letter Q instead of C. And that really is for leaders at all levels of organizational life. And it focuses on how to lead successfully in the 21st century.
I have another question for you. You, and this one I saw on your profile, I thought it would be a great one to ask. You mentioned that, or you believe, I should say, that we are in the early stages of the greatest change in the workplace since the start of the Industrial Revolution. Why is that? And kind of touch on that for our audience.
Why it is because the world is changing. If you look at the work of Peter Drucker, who was the father of management consulting, in his 90s, in the 1990s, Peter Drucker was talking about how in the industrial age, the people serve the system. In the digital age, the system has to serve the people. If you look at the work of Douglas McGregor, he talked about theory X, theory Y. Theory X is based on the belief that employees only work because they have to work. They are not motivated to work, so forth. So it's very much about top-down autocratic leadership. If you look at the evolution of generations of the workforce, COVID has really served as a catalyst for what was there for a very long time. For years, we heard how millennials have no loyalty. They just up and leave after 2 and 3 years. It wasn't that they have no loyalty. They have no loyalty to a job that has no meaning. And so children are growing up into the workforce with different sets of values and beliefs and self-worth than their parents and their grandparents did. And successful leaders need to recognize that and shape their businesses around that. That doesn't mean you give up on the purpose of your business. It doesn't mean that you give up on the values of your business. It doesn't mean that you give up on what you want to achieve with your business. It means that you work with your workforce to align what's important to them with what's important to you.
And it's like the title of the show, Ask, Shut Up, and Listen. And that's a very hot topic, and I can relate, just like any young adult can relate to those feelings, because it's so many things that can be a give and take on both sides, the employee and the employer. But kind of what we've been talking about on this episode, if both parties ask, shut up, and listen, I think so much growth can happen. I think a lot of things are red and black and white. You're right or you're wrong, and there's no explanation. You can't even explain. You can't give your perspective. It's just like, nope, like get back to work, get back. And I think that's keeping us in the plateau. That's not really helping anybody learn to appreciate the core mission of the brand, or what the top guy wants to do upstairs to lead the organization to the next level. I think a lot can be beneficial when everyone listens. And I understand how there's a lot of things going on for the higher space, admin. But at the same time, you'd be surprised the perspective that you can gain from the front line.
I'm going to go even further. Continuing the leadership styles of the 20th century isn't going to keep you on the plateau. It's going to put you back in the valley. It's going to put you out of business. And I'm going to name names for just a moment. There is some core of people that will go to work for Elon Musk, who said you must be in the office at least 40 hours a week or go steal time from somebody else. There are some people who will relish the idea that they're working for Elon Musk. But that's not the vast majority of workers.
Yeah.
Feeling, having an employer that feels like you're stealing time, even if you're getting your job done in 38 hours or 35 hours, having an employer that feels like you're stealing time from them isn't something that people relish for very long.
Man, that's true, man. So many good points in this episode, man. Once again, we've been talking to Brian Gorman. You can go right to his website, transforminglives.coach. I want to say thanks again to you, giving us a lot of great perspectives on this episode, and appreciate your time here.
Shemaiah, thank you so much for this opportunity.